Welcome to this special edition on education. I'm Richard Peretz, and our guest today is the President Emeritus of Nova Southeastern University and past Chairman of the Broward School Board, Dr. Abraham Fischler. He is regarded as the father of Nova for his pioneering spirit in taking NSU in Florida on a journey to become a national leader in distance learning.
With us now is Dr. Abraham Fischler, President Emeritus of Nova Southeastern University. Dr. Fischler.
Good to be here, my friend.
This is great. One of the observations I've seen is that sometimes it doesn't make sense for teachers to start a school because they don't seem to have the right skill set.
Teachers tend to be enthusiastic. They tend to be nurturing. They have what they have and they want to give it to their students. And those are very important qualities. But there's more to being a principal of a school or a leader in any activity, because leaders have to have the tenacity, the perseverance, the ability to make difficult decisions, sometimes even painful to the receiver of the information. So you tend to have to use your cognitive process to inflict consequences that you don't like, but necessary for the organization that you're responsible for. It's difficult for teachers to do that.
In addition to the skills that you've mentioned, there seems to be a level of finding a market. Many of the teachers I know, and I'm one of them, we have a guaranteed market. Once we have a job, we show up in September and there's people in the classroom. When you started your cluster program, there was no guaranteed market.
What you just said is true. But there was a balance that had to be maintained. Cash flow was very important. And so rather than spend time talking about what I'd like to do, I had to spend time on what it was possible for us to do in order to bring in the resources necessary. And it was fortuitous that we chose distance education as a phenomenon. But I didn't know when I chose it the pushback that was legal and should have been expected or explored. I really didn't know that. I thought that once the institution received Southern Association accreditation, that I could go anywhere and teach. That's not the case. I learned that education is a state's rights, and every state is protective of their turf and protective of the institutions within the state to which they are obligated. And so unless you have a constituency or unless you have something that, when evaluated, represents an honest delivery of information and opportunity for those who participate and pay, the state has a right to prevent you from coming in. And they ought to have that right.
Let's go deeper. I have some friends who've started businesses, and what I hear you saying is that there may be some work that needs to be done before they start pursuing the particular type of school that they want to start.
When people ask me advice of the type that you've just requested, I tell them, do they have 3 years of money that they could live on without taking any money from the business they're starting? It takes about 3 years of investment of time and resources before you're able to begin to recoup from the business itself. So if you're going to start a school, you better have the preparation necessary, because there's an investment when you start a school, and there's a legal obligation, because the school is licensed. There's a legal obligation, and you're held accountable for that obligation. So you have limited creativity within a context, because you have your subjects alive and responsive and hopefully bright enough to bring in the resources that are necessary, either by growing your business rapidly enough to cover the overhead to a business, or through the tuitions that are necessary to maintain the resources. But it's true in any business. In any business, don't start a business if you don't have approximately 3 years of reserve monies.
Speaking of this long-term 3-year investment and putting resources into preparation for the growth of the business, I've taken some of the words from your blog and assembled them into a package with pictures and perhaps a convenient enough style to add to those people who may not be on the blog. And so it's sort of for them to discover piece by piece.
I thank you. I truly thank you for going through this trouble. I like the cover, Building Better Schools.
That's one that Richard selected.
Second edition. That's really something.
It's part of that marketing, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping that the first edition brought in the resources to do the second edition, and we ran out.
This is precisely what happened, and we were able to, we got some comments, and we added some more pictures because they wanted to see what happens when these principles are put into place.
Again, I thank you, and I thank Richard, and I thank all the others, Hillary, for doing this. It is a surprise.
Well, this is only one format. It's the sort of pocket version, whereas there may be others who want sort of a cocktail, coffee table version, or the workbook version.
Well, this one is in a similar format. This evolved. There's not too much preparation in doing these books, primarily because my friend Richard Peretz, who's very talented and creative and does this in a wonderful way, doesn't have 3 years in reserve prior to going into this activity, for which I'm sorry. But I do appreciate it, and I will read it carefully.
Well, they talk about the net year, whereas in 90 days, you have to have the next product. For car companies, it's every year they come out with a new model. But for websites, the net year is 90 days. And because of the digital acceleration, we're ready for the workbook version of this next.
I'm putting together a proposal. I've put together 4 companies. 4 companies, am I right? Imaginos, Selt, IBM kind of Deletus, but not as a company, as an individual, and V-Schools.
Yeah, I've seen that one, right?
Okay. And what I'm trying to do is take one zone, and I've asked the superintendent.
2006, your blog.
Correct. One zone, and spend 5 years changing that zone. I'm more optimistic today after speaking to this webinar involved the four people, 4 corporations. But the one that's really exciting to me is V School, Z. Unbelievable with what they've accomplished in 4 years.
Dr. Fischler, in your blog in 2006, you laid out a vision of where we could go with computer-assisted instruction projects and discussions. How's that going?
It's serendipitous that you asked that question today, because today we had a webinar which was sponsored by eSchools Z. It envisions students having access to computers both as a learning tool, as a communication tool, and as a research tool. Built into this program are the 21st century skills. In addition to the cognitive skills within the subject areas, there's a whole set of process skills that are required for employees in the 21st century. We ought to involve a few other companies that could augment, just in a little different way, the objectives and the implementation of the vision. Because at the present, as you know, we have 30%, 35% of our ninth graders not graduating. Most of that is low-income children, and we can't afford that in a democracy like ours. And so by being able to reorganize schools based on students' performance and varying time, and in terms of performance, I'd like to be able to demonstrate with these companies the implementation of my vision, where each student is the class. And instead of them trying to fit our time frames all the time, we can vary time and give them more time to participate in the learning sequences and the learning processes.
This sounds like more than just education reform. It sounds like this is truly transforming education.
It is transforming education. The transformation is that time is a variable, and competency what students have to achieve. And the reward is that you achieve the competency, but we don't punish you necessarily because you didn't do it in the time which the administration would prefer. And so we're able to deliver the appropriate information and the appropriate assignments to students based on their performance. And we know their performance because we're collecting data all the time.
Dr. Fischler, as a taxpayer, I'm thrilled about these new innovations, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for taking your time to do this.
This concludes our special show on education. I'm Richard Peretz. Thank you for being with us.